I tried to get on and didn't get on. No. Now, let me see. I'm going to say allow. Okay, good. Now it says, oh, good. Here I am. Okay, good. You're on already. Good. Yeah. Time with video. Great. Okay. So I'm going to hang up. Just the host will let you in soon. Yeah, I'm here with Kevin and we work on it together. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, great. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yep. She's here. Okay.
Hi. Okay, great. Hi. Okay, super. Okay.
Going.
So, hi there. Hi. Okay. So, guys, here's the question. I wanted to show the book review is on two artists, Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci. So, I found these two clips and I showed them yesterday at the library and it was very successful. So, I'm thinking I would like to show it to this group if we could. And I guess that involves sharing the screen, which I don't know how to do, but you could teach me also when you're doing it. I'd love to know how to do it. Anyways.
We need to let her, give her the option, yeah? To share the screen.
Okay, so
yeah.
now I'm going to go to the full screen. Okay.
Yeah, okay, look at your, we need first to give her an, go here on the, we're sharing screen, open it.
Where do you see that?
Multiple participants can share.
Oh, good. Okay.
Okay.
So,
you know, on the bottom, how do you call it?
I see where it says share screen. Okay,
share screen.
Yeah.
And then there is a little arrow.
Yeah.
And okay, so now we give you a permission. Yeah, you gave her a permission.
Yeah, you should be able to share your screen.
You should be able to share your screen. Let's
try. So now I don't have the links. You've got them, Leah. I don't think I have them here. Okay.
Where we got it from?
So Debbie
sent, you don't have the links. What's the? So you showed it yesterday.
Huh? Okay, so she sent you the links. Okay, so just a minute. There's something from this girl Jackie. Okay, let me just see what I can find here, and I'm going to send it to you right now. Jackie, here it is. Okay, this is good. I'm sending it to you right now.
Send it to Debbie and me. Right now, okay. Also for Dio,
Debbie,
because I'm sitting in her.
I'm gonna send it to.
I'm sitting in Debbie's.
I'm sending it to Debbie at the JCC right now.
And to me as well, El Shani. Okay, okay.
I just sent it to Debbie.
Okay, no problem. Okay.
It's not going. Okay, I don't know why that is. Okay. So this was a. Why is it not going?
Something I'm going to work on, yeah. But I mean, I can work on it while this is going.
Oh, it's not to be here all day. Just to see the difference of
Debbie, Leah, what's your
El Shani at DPJCC.
What is it?
El Shani.
SHANI. Yeah, there you are. Okay, good. Okay, good. So I'm sending it to both of you now.
Okay, and we will
now. So you'll see there's two links. The first one I want to show is, and I might not do it. So, okay. So are you going to set that up on the desktop? Is that how you're going to do those two links?
Yes.
Yep.
Is that how you do it? Okay.
We got it now.
And how are you transferring it from what I'm giving you now? Kevin, how are you transferring it onto the desktop?
I'm just going to click it and then it should open the link itself. So I'm going to go to share screen.
But I mean, right now it's in your phone, right? Right now it's on your computer.
Correct. So right now you should be able to see this email. And then if I bring this over here, are you able to see the screen?
Okay. So you know what? I think I'm going to have to. Right, I'm going to close out of this. I'm not going to learn how to do that right now. Okay, because okay, this perfect. This is the one I want to show. But Kevin, the thing is that in the middle of it, all of a sudden it goes into ads. So you got to hit the skip ads.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the one I'm going to show in its entirety. Okay, until the end of it.
Okay.
And you'll be. I can say, and I'll say, Leah, you can turn this off now. Okay, at the end, when she finishes. It breaks.
But this is the beginning of your program.
No, this will be, I'm doing it at the end, only if I want to, only if I have time at the end. Okay. Now the other one, the second one in there is the one on Michelangelo. And that's a little trickier because in that one, I want to start it. Okay, so go ahead and find that one. See, we got to get rid of all these ads. Okay, good.
Okay.
Now we're going to go to about 13:11. I'm going to say 13 minutes and 11 seconds.
All
Let's
right.
see. Okay, good. Now wait. Okay, go.
We received a commission that allowed him to.
All right, that's 13:11.
Go back. Can I change it on mine or no? Only on yours.
No,
So go
'cause
back
you're
a little
just
bit.
seeing the screen.
Oh
You're
yeah, this is all right. So good. So keep going forward. Go forward.
forward.
Yeah. Forward. Go forward. No, something's wrong. I don't know why that's doing that. Okay, so now go back to 13:11 where we were. It should be like where, go back a little bit more than that, maybe. No, it wasn't about that guy. I don't know what happened here. 13. Go
That's
for it.
13.
Go for it. Keep going a little bit more.
You want to go to 14?
Okay, yeah, let's look at that. Okay.
Admirable work, so perfectly. When Michelangelo learned that some were attributing his creation to another artist, he stole it to the church where it was being displayed.
Okay, so go back a little bit. Go back. Okay. I want to get in the beginning of when they talk about the Pietà. Okay, a little bit more. Okay, do that. Okay, let's see. So let's start it there. Ended up in Rome.
2 years later, where he received a commission that allowed him to give form to his growing spiritual awareness.
Okay, that's good. We could start it right there.
Right here or 13:09?
Yeah.
Right here?
No, back. Go where it's spiritual awareness or whatever.
All right, hold on. It's going to take me a second to get there.
After a short stay in Bologna,
Is that good right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now let's see what the next one is. Can you go one more second in?
Yeah.
So I just.
Michelangelo ended up in Rome 2 years later.
Okay, that's great. Okay, that's great. Yeah, after a short stay in Bologna or whatever. That's good.
Okay.
Okay, so that's good. And then that goes until, I'm going to say 21:03. Do you want to see the ending to see where to go to?
Yeah, you said 21.
21 something. I don't know.
Once it's. Okay, thank you so much. Okay.
Leonardo experienced problems when he tried a novel way of applying the paint and ruined much
I
of his
keep going. Yeah, where are you now?
all the way to Rome for an even more.
Right now we're at 21.5.
Going, keep going. Yeah, just keep going for another couple seconds.
Even in these, the forceful vitality and vastly different styles of the two legendary
Yeah,
masters.
one more second and then this is done. Shines through, end. Okay, that's it.
So 13:09 to 21:47.
Yeah. And this only is if we have time, okay? I'm going to be very hang loose with them today. I'm going to say to them, if they want to see it, we could watch it. I don't know. I don't usually give this much video, but these were interesting, so they might want to see them. Do you think it's going to show well on the screen?
What?
Well, are they going to be able to hear it well? It won't be muffled or anything because it's.
We need to ask them to
Turn off to mute themselves.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, we could do that.
Video.
Okay. Yeah.
But are the one that need to admit everyone to let them in, or you also have you can do it also?
No, you're the host.
We are the
Host.
All right,
Yeah,
guys.
but
you're the host. Okay.
You ready for me to let people in?
All right. So do you have a lot of people yet? How many do you have?
We have 5.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you could start letting them in.
Start let them in.
Okay.
Oh, no, give it another. Is it 10 yet?
Yes.
Is it 10? Give it one.
One
Yeah.
more minute.
Okay, one more minute. Good. Okay. Okay. Okay.
To see, you want us to leave our video on? We don't need to be on, yeah? I mean, we are here, but we can close the camera?
You can close the camera, just your name. Yeah.
Just,
The thing is, are you going to hear me when I say, okay, Leah, can we?
yes. It will be Debbie's picture, because
Yep.
if we close the camera,
That's sure. That's fine. Okay, good. Okay, perfect.
we can
Yeah, okay.
start.
Yeah, so go ahead. You can let people in if you'd like. Yeah.
And we're talking just at the end. You only want it at the end, not before.
Right.
Okay.
It's going to be, yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Good morning. How's everybody? Hi, I'm watching everybody pop in here. Good. Good to see you. Hi.
Hi.
Ethel and Ruth, I can see you. Dora, Eileen,
Yes.
I see a lot of names. Judy, I don't see any faces here yet, but okay, good. So glad. When we're a small group, which I think we will be today, let's, show faces so we could see each other and say hi.
Yeah, say hi, Lynda. It's so nice of you to do this twice so we can watch it.
Oh, you know what? I'm so happy to do it because you know something? We had a lot of people register for today, and I know a lot of people didn't get to read the book. But
I did long time ago. Yes.
Yeah. Right. You know what I was worried about because we changed the time today.
That's what it
Are
was.
people going to realize that we did it this morning? Right.
Right.
I have it in my book.
Okay. Well, you know what? Not everybody is so organized. That's the problem.
Yes.
And you know what? If you're not used to doing something and all of a sudden there's a change, it's,
Yeah, okay. I'm always looking forward to this, so I cannot miss it. Believe me.
I look forward to our group too.
Yeah, I'm already reading Beautiful Country.
Are you enjoying it?
So. It's too many foreign words,
I heard from people that it takes a little getting into.
But the way she writes it as a girl, as a little girl, her thoughts. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It turns out to be a beautiful book as you get into it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. So we'll give ourselves a few more minutes and then we'll say we are really a small group and this is great. I'm sorry that you're not in my living room. I'd be giving you a cup of coffee right now.
I would enjoy it.
Yeah.
I have a question. Do you have a large group of people coming in, into the library at this point?
You know what? It's interesting. Yesterday, with a lot of our regulars being away, we still had 26.
Wow.
Last month we had 35. So
right.
yeah, we have a large group in there. Yeah. And last month here, trying to remember what I had here, I think we had close to 30. I think we had 30 on Zoom. So it's interesting. Yeah. So the problem is we have to get, stick to our time. We're going out of town, which is why I had to change the time today. So that was the whole thing. Otherwise we never would have done that. Yeah.
So are you going to continue to have both the library and the JCC?
At this point, yeah, as long as there's enough people, then the JCC wants to continue doing it. So we just have to make sure we have enough people. Yeah.
Okay.
Is the library requiring masks when you come in?
The library is not requiring masks, but a lot of people, it was mixed.
Coming in. Okay. All right. That's a good.
So
what about membership?
Good information.
And no, it's totally free to come to the library. Yeah.
But I recommend that people use the mask. I used it all the time. And at one time, I think I took it off for a little while and I got the COVID. So I recommend everybody to wear the mask.
Well, I think this one is so contagious.
Yes. But it's not bad, you get like a cold or something, but you have to quarantine. So
right.
It's not like the cold.
So I'll tell you what I have today. So one of the things I did at the library that I would
I learned so much about the Bahamas. So my daughter, she's the kind of daughter that's like, I don't want to get my hair wet. I said, how do you go to Bahamas and not get your hair wet?
Okay, Judy, do you want to mute yourself? Yeah. Hi, Judy.
She's
Judy
muted.
Porter, hi. Okay. So what I wanted to tell you was so yesterday at the library, I showed them 2 clips that I found when I was doing my research. I found a CBS do you ever watch Jane Pauley on Sunday mornings? Yes. She's got a really good show on. If you ever want to watch it, it's called CBS Sunday Morning, and it's with Jane Pauley. and she brings on wonderful clips that are very, very interesting. And one of the ones that she did was on Leonardo da Vinci. And
Oh.
it's about 8 minutes long, and it's really good. Then I found also another one that's very long on Michelangelo that's 45 minutes. And I didn't want to do, I obviously didn't do the whole thing, but I found certain minutes that are good. So I thought what we would do today is we would have our conversation, and then if we have time at the end and you would like, I'll go ahead. I've got it all set up. Leah Shani is so wonderful, and she's subbing today for Debbie. So Leah, are you on? Say hi to everybody.
Hi.
Okay, there's Leah. Okay. And that's a pretty picture you could see down at it's at the bottom of my screen. I don't know where it is on yours.
Yes.
Oh,
Hi.
yeah. Oh, there she is. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
and Kevin.
And Kevin, we got two
Going.
brothers helping us out today. But
Hi.
anyway, so what I thought we would do is at the
Yes,
end,
let her
We
in,
need you
please.
time,
to.
we'll go ahead.
We need you.
Hello,
We need
Hi,
you.
everybody. Good. Glad to see everybody.
bye-bye.
Okay.
So hi, Kathy. So what we were just saying is that we're a small group, which is nice. It looks like we're going to be a small group today, even though we had a lot of people sign up. I think a lot of people may have forgotten our timing today. So I do apologize, by the way, that we're not doing this on our regular Thursdays. We're going to go back to Thursday at 1:30, so that'll be great next month. But this time, so I have this clip, the CBS this morning on Leonardo da Vinci, which I'd like to play for you at the end today. And then the other piece I found was Michelangelo. And this was part of a 45-minute documentary, which I would also recommend that you see. But I thought what I would do for today is pull out another 8 minutes about the Pietà and David. And it's really fun to see this. Okay, so if we have time at the end, I'm going to do it. Otherwise, I'm going to tell you the link and you guys can do it on your own. But I think we'll have time today. Okay, so let's go ahead. I don't know, time-wise, I think we're about ready to begin. Let me ask you this. Well, first of all, for next month, September, we've got A Beautiful Country by Wang, W-A-N-G, right? And I was saying that it might be a little bit harder to get into, a few people have said, but it's quite a beautiful book. And again, wonderful reviews, and we'll have a wonderful discussion regarding the book, I'm sure. Okay, so I want to begin by asking you, first of all, did you guys like the book? Did you like
Loved it.
My Marble? Yeah? Kathy's not sure?
No, I'm not sure because I never could get it.
Oh, okay. So that's okay.
I
You're
could
going to enjoy
find
the good. You're
Wasn't
going to enjoy the
available.
videos, and you'll enjoy the conversation that we have today.
Yes, yes.
So let me begin by telling you a little bit about the author, because she's an interesting person. Her name is Stephanie Story, and this is her debut novel. It's interesting that the New York Times hailed this as they called it tremendously entertaining. They thought there was one weaker part of the book, which, funny enough, I actually thought was pretty good, but the New York Times thought it was the weaker part of the book. And that was the story about Mona Lisa. For those of you that did read the book,
Right.
thought that was a little bit of a weaker part, which we'll talk about in greater depth later on. But anyway, she's an interesting author because she has a degree in fine arts from Vanderbilt. She has an MFA, a master's in fine arts and creative writing from Emerson College. She studied art in Italy, and she has been on this pilgrimage to see every Michelangelo on display in any exhibit in Europe. She's been a national television producer for 20 years. She's gotten Emmy Awards, and I guess she's quite well known as a producer, and she's always wanted to be a novelist. And so when she had this idea for this story, started 20 years ago, she says she became obsessed when she was studying Michelangelo at the university in Pisa, and she just was obsessed with him. And so at that point, she says she started to read voraciously about him.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm just sorry I'm not there in person. It was so good.
Hi.
Last time in person.
Susan, guys, you know what? Go ahead and mute yourselves, okay? If you've got background noise or someone talking, go ahead and mute yourselves. Okay. So she says it dawned on her that Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo were both in Florence, and at the exact same time, they were creating these unbelievable masterpieces, right? So she says it to her husband. He goes, "It's amazing. Nobody really knows that. Why don't you make a movie about that?" So here she's a producer, so she started to do it as a screenplay and then decided no, she wanted to write it as a novel, and that's what she did. But she wants us to know this is fiction. It is historical fiction. She used history as the foundation, and she says she was trying to be true to their personalities as she understood them, but it is fictional in many places, and there is a lot of truth to it, which we'll talk about at the end. But obviously she wants to remind us that it is a fictional piece. She says there's a lot of original sources. Michelangelo wrote all kinds of poetry and letters. We've got that to draw from. Also, this person by the name of Giorgio Vasari is considered the father of modern day art history. So he wrote extensively about these artists. And of course, we've got Leonardo's very famous notebooks that were left behind. So we see there's a lot of original material that she drew from, but of course she does go ahead and add the fictional piece to this story. Okay, so the summary. Okay, so for those of you that didn't get a hold of the book, let me give you a brief outline, and of course we'll go into more detail as we talk. But from 1501 to 1505, what was amazing is that Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo Buonarroti both lived and worked in Florence. Leonardo, when we meet him, is handsome. He's 50 years old. He's at the peak of his career. He's quite charming. People love him. And Michelangelo, at the same time, was this temperamental younger sculptor in his mid-20s. He's at that time tormented in a way. He's sort of desperate to make a name for himself. So Michelangelo comes, he's virtually an unknown when he returns to Florence. He has just had this great fame in Rome with the Pietà. Now, there was no social media, right? There wasn't any way for people to know what was going on in other cities. So even though he was famous in Rome with the Pietà, he gets to Florence, nobody has any idea who he is. And so other than, of course, his family, because he did grow up there, but they don't know that he's a famous sculptor at that point. So he's now going to have to try to win this commission to carve what is one of the most famous, will be one of the most famous sculptures, and that is David. So he's got this family. We grew up in Florence. They are impoverished. And the father believes that what this kid is doing, what Michelangelo is doing, is the lowest kind of form of making a living. And he's very upset with him. And they actually shun him because they say he's no more than a stonemason. And he goes ahead and he's not even allowed to live with the family at that time. And he ends up making a shed around his sculpture, which turns out to be David, of course, but he gets a shed, and he actually has to sleep there and eat there as well. So here he is, and he's now striving to build and carving David. Leonardo, at the same time that Michelangelo starts to rise, his reputation is rising. Leonardo's life is falling apart. So he's now also vying to get this David commission. He wants to get this same commission. The problem with Leonardo, we find out he can't finish projects. He's obsessed with a lot of other things, scientific things, flying. He creates war machines, and he almost dies in the war. And he sees, and again, this is all, remember, it's fiction. He sees a beautiful woman in the marketplace. She's a silk merchant's wife. He becomes obsessed with her. And what do you think her name is, of course? Lisa, right? It's Lisa. Okay, so this is where we are in the story. This is really the rivalry between these two artists is really the crux of the story. So let me ask you, those of you that read the book, first of all, what did you think about the storyline? Did you like the idea of the rivalry? Did you like that basic storyline? Yes?
Okay. Can I say something?
Sure.
I never heard that there was any rivalry among them, but I can understand for the story, it makes it very interesting because this poor guy, Michelangelo, I mean, his father, he's tormented because he wants to do what his father wants, but on the other way, he feels like a pull to really sculpt and do what he's called. Right. Which is to be an artist. And I guess at that time it was not such a great thing. It's not a way of making some way of living. So, right.
So he was
Yeah.
very tormented. He was torn between his family, what his family wanted from him, and what he actually wanted to do.
Right.
Any other thoughts about the storyline? What about the style of writing? Did you like her style of writing? Were you
Yes.
engaged by it?
Yes, I thought it was very good.
Yeah. I think, yeah, go ahead. Were you going to say something, Eileen?
Yeah, I thought that the diversity between the two men was so great. It was extreme. And I guess she was making that point. But Michelangelo was well known at the time, by fellow artists. I mean, they knew who he was. I just thought it was just extreme in the way she described them and
Right.
the roles that she gave them.
Right. She was really trying to dramatize, right? That's
Yes.
what she was really trying to do. I think you're right. What she did also, for those of you that didn't read the book, she did alternating chapters. So, what she really did, and I think it was successful, what she did was she was telling each of their stories, and then she was interweaving it with this idea of the rivalry, the rivalry over getting the commission for the sculpture of David. Okay, Leonardo wanted it, and Michelangelo, of course, wanted it. So what she does is she talks about their background. A lot of this is, of course, historical. So let's start with Leonardo da Vinci. What do we know about Leonardo da Vinci? Well, first of all, in terms of his family life, if you recall, his father had 12 legitimate children, and he was the one illegitimate child. He was born, his mother was she'd been a house slave. And so he was left out of the will. He never got a proper education, right? What else do we know about his background for Leonardo? Leonardo was pretty much on his own. He himself says that he had a strange life, quote, half accepted by my grandfather and uncle, half rejected for being the son of a house slave, half loved by my mother, entirely hated by her husband, half man, half bastard. That's sort of how he saw himself. And it really disturbed him, really, all of his life. And it affected him in a very major way. And one way that he was affected by his illegitimacy is this. He says, quote, if I had been born legitimate to a legitimate married couple with a legitimate father, I would have had to suffer through a legitimate education in classrooms. I would have had to memorize information made up by legitimate men. Instead, I was forced to learn from my own eyes and my own thoughts and my own experiences. I was the best teacher to myself. In other words, he was a hands-on kind of guy. And we see this later in his life because look at the inventions that he came up with, because he was not afraid to experiment and try things on his own because he didn't have book learning. In fact, he really wasn't very impressed with books. And he thought in a way that the idea of the printing press and books being so widespread was really a negative because people were not learning from experience. They were learning from other people. So here he is now. When we see him, he's 48 years old, Leonardo. He's at the peak of his career. And how's the world responding to him? How's the world responding to Leonardo? He's done the Last Supper. They've come to see that fresco. Amazing. Although, by the way, it's already at that time starting to crumble, right? Because he used to experiment with paints. Again, he did everything on his own. He learned his own way, and he created his own types of paints. And so some of them did not have the staying power of others. And so a lot of times the paint started to disintegrate. And he sort of was aware of that even at the time of the Last Supper. Okay, so here we go now. He's 48 years old. Being what? He's celebrated by everybody. Tourists come, they only want to see him and meet him, and he talks to them, and he entertains them. He's a very colorful kind of guy, Leonardo, right? Again, how does she make the contrast between the two? He dresses very flamboyantly. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
He wears pink tights and purple shirts, and he's got golden shoes, and he really, by our standards, he probably looked quite ridiculous, but by their standards, he was just a colorful kind of guy. He had one prized piece of jewelry. You remember what that was?
A
He had
ring.
a ring, a bird ring, and it was given to him by the king. And why that's important, we're going to see later. That was his most prized possession. And in the end, he uses that to buy back the Mona Lisa. So we'll talk about that when we get to it, but that's why it's an important remember. By the way, she made that up, the ring. There really was not a ring like that from Leonardo. That was part of her fiction. But the other thing that we know about him is that he was very arrogant. And from the very first time that he meets Michelangelo, even as a student, used to draw. He used to try to copy Leonardo's work. So now he shows up back in Florence. Michelangelo has come back after his success with the Pietà, comes back and he wants to see Leonardo and he wants to meet him and say, hey, I'm a fellow artist. And Leonardo goes ahead and is like, dismisses him. Says, oh, who are you? I don't know anything about you. I really don't know you. And he dismisses him and he embarrasses him in front of all of these Florentines that are standing there celebrating Leonardo. And so we see this arrogance in him. And the other thing is we see that he's very jealous of anyone else, Leonardo. And we also know he's very mercenary. The thing about Leonardo is he likes doing art, but he really likes the lifestyle that it is giving him. He loves his beautiful apartment. He loves the power that he has. He loves the prestige that he has. So why is that important? Well, he does something else that's quite unusual. Loyalty would not be an attribute we would give him because when he was living in Milan, he was a favorite of the Duke and he lived in the palatial suites and he had a great life with the Duke. And then the French come and they invade and they win and the Duke has to leave. And guess what he does? Instead of leaving like all the other loyalists, he says, oh, you know, I got the same deal with the French. So he stays with the French and he has a great deal going on with the French. Of course, then he's scared to death because the Duke is now making a comeback. And all of a sudden he realizes, ooh, now I'm in danger. So then he flees from Milan and he ends up going to Florence, which is how Michelangelo reunites with him in Florence. And by the way, he does that again a second time when he's living in Florence and he goes ahead and he joins the papal army. Remember that? He joins the papal army because they're going to give him more than he can get from his own people in Florence. So he's known to switch his loyalties. Okay. The other thing about him that's very important to know is that he has a reputation. Do you remember anything about his reputation with his work?
That he never finishes his work.
Didn't finish his
work. Yeah.
And so, you know, on the one hand, you could say maybe he was lazy, but do you remember really why he never finished his work? It was because he was a perfectionist. He couldn't stand to say it was done because he kept trying to perfect it. And so to him, he would rather abandon it for a while or forever rather than say it was finished and complete. So he didn't finish his work. And the other thing that was interesting was he was very worried about his legacy. He was worried because he had no children. His work was very often, you know, we said even the Last Supper was starting to disintegrate. He had no idea how famous it would end up being, of course. He was worried that his work was disintegrating or it was in private homes, that nobody would ever know who Leonardo da Vinci was. And so, ironically enough, he's very worried about Michelangelo later when Michelangelo looks like he's going to surpass him because he realizes that Michelangelo is going to be famous through posterity and he might not be. So we know that about him. Okay, so he loves the crowd. He loves people around him. He loves to entertain people. This was funny. He tells a story. He entertains the crowds. Okay, when these tourists come, they want to watch him paint. And he talks to them at the same time. And he says, you know, when I was a student, I was studying with a master. And a merchant came in and he said to my master, he said, how can you paint such beautiful paintings when I'm looking around and your children are so ugly? So his master, the painter, responded. He said, well, I make my pictures by day. I make my children by night. So he was like, he had a body type of sense of humor, and everybody found that really very funny about him. The other thing about Leonardo that we should know is that he has a companion with him. This is biographically true. He had a companion, an assistant by the name of Salai, who was a young student of his, and he and Salai obviously had a strong relationship, homosexual relationship, but he was heterosexual as well. So I guess we would say he was bisexual, according to this author. And we also know that he had many, many interests. What else is Leonardo da Vinci famous for? Do you remember?
All his war
He
construction.
he devised like armored cars, right? Or the war weapons and cannons that would blow up. And he did all of these amazing things and flying machines. By the way, when we look at that CBS video, you're going to see that it's really great because it talks a lot about his different interests, but he comes up with a lot of amazing inventions.
Yeah.
So here he is. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that when he tried to divert the river, that was really a fiasco. I think he was very hurt with that because a lot of people died.
Right. Eileen, did you have something you wanted to add to? Go ahead. Unmute yourself. You have to unmute. Unmute yourself.
Sorry. I thought I was addressing the same issue. My friend and I was talking about it. We were wondering if that was a true story.
Yes, it was true. He did design it. What wasn't true is that it wasn't his fault. In this story, she makes it like he was, kind of really very closely involved with the building of it. But in fact, no, it was true. He did design it. And in fact, what did happen in real life was the fact that there was a flood. And unfortunately, 80 men did die in the real life flood, which is, of course, what she talks about in the story. He was the kind of guy that was not content with following, somebody else's design, somebody else's orders. He was so creative that he just wasn't even Mother Nature. He wanted to beat Mother Nature. So he went ahead and, redesigned the Arno. And he did that for a very good reason. He thought that it would, in fact, help the army in Florence. One of the things I learned when I did this, when I did all of this information, when I did the research for this, is that at that time there wasn't a unified Italy. There were all these little cities had their own armies. So Florence was about to be overrun by Pisa. So by rerouting the Arno, it gave them some kind of geographic, advantage. So that's why he really did it. Yeah. Okay, so in the storyline, what we see with Leonardo is, of course, the fact that he is obsessed with a woman that he sees in the market. So I want to talk about Mona Lisa in the story. Now, okay. So, of course, we don't know anything about the real Mona Lisa, right? We really don't. What we do know about the Mona Lisa is that everybody has a theory, but nobody knows really anything, in fact, of truth, of even who she was. And so you should know, in my research, what I found, there were some people that say it was actually his mother that he drew. Other people say he was the kind that always put riddles into his paintings. And one of the riddles might have been that it was him, his face, as a woman, that he did. So they really don't know. There's also other copies of the Mona Lisa there that came up. And so they know that he did other drafts of this painting. But for the purposes of this story, who was Mona Lisa in the story? Who was Mona Lisa in the story?
It's a wife of a very rich merchant. And she's so beautiful that he is, when he sees her, he just had to follow her. And but she was, I think she did something. She paid something for to liberate him from something that happened.
Right.
So she did something good for him.
Yes. He looked at her like a saving angel. He was in a market and, he was always obsessed with flight. So he went ahead and he saw some doves being caged up. So what he does is he wants to see the doves fly, and he opens up the cage and the doves fly off. And the guy who owns the doves says, now you have to pay me for my doves. They flew off. And he's sketching the doves. He says, no problem. He goes to reach into his pocket for money and he has no money. His lover, Salai, had taken the money out of his pocket, so he had no money. And the guy who owned the doves was ready to chop off his left hand because as far as he was concerned, that Leonardo had stolen the birds. Well, all of a sudden, this beautiful woman comes over and says, don't cut his hand off. If you have to cut anyone's hand off, cut mine off. She's willing to give him the money. The guy won't take the money. He really wants to chop off Leonardo's hand. Anyways, it turns out that she saves his left hand, which is wonderful because that was the hand that he painted with. And so lo and behold, he's now obsessed with her. And in many cases in the story, she is a saving angel to him. What's very interesting about her, she at first doesn't want him to paint her. And one of the reasons in the very beginning, remember we mentioned how he switched his loyalties? She was upset that he switched his loyalty against Florence, his own hometown. And when he went ahead and switched back his loyalties to Florence, she agreed to sit for him. And once she starts to sit for him, she's a very interesting person because she becomes very different with him than with anyone else. Do you remember what the difference is? When she's talking alone with Leonardo, when he's painting her, she's talking to him. She's very animated. Her hands are fluttering as she's talking. As soon as a servant would walk in the room or her husband would walk in the room, she would not speak. And what did she do with her hands when someone walked in the room? She would put them in her lap. Why that's interesting is that in the Mona Lisa, when you see the picture of the Mona Lisa, it's a 3/4 length portrait and her hands are in her lap. And so he's sort of, the author here is, she's trying to explain the painting according to her own theory, okay? So the story that she gives us is that Leonardo begins a sort of secret, hidden relationship with this woman, Lisa, which never really amounts to anything other than the fact that he's very drawn to her. He confides in her, she confides in him. And she is a very frustrated woman, and she's very typical of her time. She is a woman that at one point she says, you know, even if you paint my portrait, quote, no one will see me, even though it's a picture of me. They will only see you and your renowned genius. They will see your brush strokes, your colors, the great masterpiece by the great Leonardo da Vinci. But their eyes will pass over me like a ghost, the way my husband looks at me. So, in other words, she is a woman who is really locked into her house, and her husband wants to possess her. In fact, he wants to take this painting when it's finished, put it in his own dingy little tiny office study, and never let the world see it. And of course, that's so frustrating to not only to Mona Lisa, but also to the artist, Leonardo. In fact, when he sees where the husband wants to hang this finished painting, he goes back to the husband and he gives him the ring to try to buy it back. And that's the only thing that will satisfy the husband. And he ends up taking the painting back, and he has it with him. What is interesting, by the way, is that the Mona Lisa is a painting that the artist kept with him all through his life. He never really did part with it. So nobody really knows what was the real reason he kept this one particular painting for himself. But this is the way the author kind of tells us. And how does she explain the smile on Mona Lisa's face? She says that smile, that hidden smile, was the smile that she gave to Leonardo after they give one kiss to each other when they're together after the sitting. And that smile is the smile that she had on her face when she leaves him. Leaves Leonardo. And of course, that's sort of their hidden secret together. So, any other comments that you want to make about Leonardo and his relationship to Mona Lisa? And again, the way he even does this painting, and the author does a really good job, I thought, of explaining how he's so careful with the idea of the poplar wood, and how he does the primer, and he adds red paint around her body and blue paint around her face, and how he wants no brush strokes to show up at all on the painting. He really wants this painting to be of her. He wants people to see her because that was her desire, for people to see her. Anything else that you want to talk about with that? It's a very special portrait, and he, as he's painting it, he feels her spirit seeping into the wood grain. Okay, so I'm looking at my timing. We're going to end what at 11:30? Is that what we're planning on? Yes, everybody. Yeah. Okay, because I want to make sure I have time to show you the Leonardo da Vinci CBS special thing that I have for you. Okay. So I want to move on, and of course, the beauty of the Mona Lisa is something that this author because she's got a master's in fine arts, she does a really good job of detailing why the painting looks the way it does and how it looks the way it does. And she talks about the fact that the eyes were the thing that drew him in, her eyes. And you remember when you talk about the Mona Lisa, people always say it's amazing when you're looking directly at that painting, it looks like she's looking at you, that she's following you in the room. And he talks about how he creates that. And also how her smile is sort of an upturned smile, but it almost looks like she is smiling at you. When you look at the painting straight on, she's not smiling, but then from different angles, it looks like she is smiling. So the author does a really good job of talking about how he so painstakingly does all of that painting. Okay, so I want to move on, and if there's no other comments about that, I want to move on because I want you to see the video. I want to talk about Michelangelo. So here he is, he's 24 years old. He comes to Florence, and there's a great contrast, even in his appearance, to Leonardo. Leonardo always looks colorful, clean. He looks like a star. And then we have this young, tormented Michelangelo. What about his appearance?
He's always like very badly dressed, and he's always dirty. Sometimes he has to crawl underneath something, so he's all full of dust, and his appearance is like for somebody who's very low.
Very low. In fact, he also listens to his father. His father says, you know what? You could get sick if you bathe more than once a month. So he doesn't, we would call him unhygienic, let's put it that way, because he definitely does not bathe. And he wore the clothes of a stonemason. He wore heavy boots. He was always filled with always looking like covered by dust. Okay. So here he is, he comes, he had just completed the Pietà, and he does not get any kind of welcome parade. Not only doesn't he get a welcome parade, but he actually gets the opposite. He is shunned by his family, and nobody's paying any attention to him at all. And what's interesting that from the very beginning, what we see about him is his early life. We get a background. He was a baby and his mother had died early. He was given to a wet nurse, and this wet nurse was the wife of a stonemason. And so he says that he was nursed not only on mother's milk, but also he developed an unquenchable thirst for marble. He says that when he was a teenager, he was able to go, he was selected by the Medici family to study in their garden. And so he started his art studies under the Medicis. His father, though, as we mentioned, was very difficult. His father wanted financial support from his son, but he hated the way his son made a living. And so his family, though impoverished, thought that sculpting was a disgrace. He had one brother with whom he had a terrible relationship, who was very hostile, who betrayed him on many occasions, not only to the family, but also just even in the community, was very difficult. He had another brother with whom he was very close, his younger brother. In fact, it was because of his younger brother that he was also motivated to continue to send money back to the family. And he did. He supported them even though they shunned him. So, according to this author, even the morning when he was supposed to try out now, he was supposed to go for this commission. He's vying for the commission of what's called the Duccio stone. And I looked up the pronunciation of that, Duccio, D-U-C-C-I-O. It was a stone that had been botched up before, but now they want somebody to go ahead and carve and make a beautiful sculpture. And so his family goes ahead that morning and they lock him in his room, and they won't let him out. He has to actually climb out of a window 2 stories down and jump into the dirt and the mud and show up covered with mud, trying to get this commission for the Ducho stone. So we know certain things about him. We know that he's a very insecure person. I mean, he's in awe of Leonardo. So he just idealizes his art and his reputation. He sees it that way, but he loathes him as a person. He is very jealous as a young man, thinking he will never be able to attain any kind of greatness, but he's passionate about what he does. And he now shows up, he sees this Ducho stone, and he says, oh my God, everybody thinks Leonardo's going to get the commission, but he's going to really try for it. And he ends up winning the commission. What's amazing is the stone itself. What does the stone look like when they show him this stone? Do you remember what it looks like at all? Anybody?
From what I remember, the stone was not very good for carving figures. It was a very hard. So
Exactly.
He had to figure out how to do it.
Stone was weather beaten. It was moldy. It was lying sideways on the ground, and it was it was too narrow. It seemed too narrow to support a proper figure. It had gashes in it where other people had tried to carve it and they botched it up. In fact, at one point, Leonardo says to Michelangelo, you know, there's one part of the stone that has a knot in it, and that knot is that's the whole composition of the stone needs to be around this knot. And Michelangelo, this says a lot about his personality. He doesn't want any advice from Leonardo. Leonardo's been so rude to him that in a fit of anger, he goes ahead and he gashes his own stone and he knocks out that knot. So he sort of damages his own stone. What's very interesting about Michelangelo and his relationship to the stone, he believes, speaks to him. He believes that there is a relationship between the stone and the carver. He says that the stone, the Pietà, when he was working with the Pietà spoke to him. It sang to him. It chanted to him. And so he was able to release the Pietà from the stone. And in this case, he wanted to release the figure from the stone. I need you, somebody, please mute yourselves, guys. Mute yourselves. Okay, thank you. Okay. So in this case, after he wins the commission, and why does he win the commission, by the way? Why does he win it over Leonardo? You know why? It's the old story. He was willing to do it for cheaper. Leonardo wanted a beautiful apartment. He wanted money. He wanted and they said, you know what? Let's take a chance on Michelangelo. You know, let's let him do it. So they give him this stone. And the problem is the stone, when he starts to work with it, it doesn't speak to him. And he's begging the stone, speak to me, speak to me. He's thinking Leonardo had wanted to do some kind of a dragon out of the stone. He wanted to do Hercules. But then the committee comes to him and says, we don't want Hercules. We want you to do the sculpture of David, the biblical David. He does not want to do David. Why? Because Donatello has already done a magnificent David, which is in Florence even today. He doesn't want to compete with that. But they say no, they want David. And finally, on Easter Sunday, after this stone, he goes, he looks at the stone, he doesn't know what to do with the stone. Finally, on Easter Sunday, he's looking at the stone, and the stone begins to speak to him in passages from the Bible, and it is David's voice. What's fascinating about the stone as it starts to speak, it is not in a child's voice. All of the other Davids that have ever been done have been of young boys that had their slingshot, and they killed triumphantly, they killed the Goliath. But in fact, in this case, this voice is an adult voice, and David is speaking to him in biblical verse. And so he's finally able now, he's starting to picture David. David is now standing on the edge of the battlefield. He's preparing to fight. He doesn't know if he's going to die or he's going to win, but he knows it's his destiny to fight. And David has this mixture in his face of confidence, but also doubt. And he's standing there half relaxed, but coiled, his body coiled with anxiety. And finally, Michelangelo, as he's looking at this stone and he's hearing David speak to him, he's able to envision what he's going to now carve. And he starts to carve, and he realizes that, of course, David would be speaking in an adult voice, because it would seem at that moment when David chose to fight his enemy, he ceased to be a soft-bellied, innocent boy wandering the fields. Rather, he grew into a powerful, muscular hero and king. This David was a man. The marble had finally woken. David was calling. Now it was up to Michelangelo to set him free. And he begins the carving. And of course, we know what the response was. The response is, people, when they first come to watch him carve, everyone is filled with doubt. How can he do this? In fact, they're taunting him, so much so that he builds a shed around David so that he can have privacy, because he's in the middle of a picture. He's in the middle of the town. He builds the shed and he sleeps there and he eats there and he's carving there at the same time. And the stone is speaking to him, and he's carving and he's making sketches. And all of a sudden, when he's done, all of a sudden, people start to look at it and they see that it is actually perfect. They see that the features are beautiful, magnificently carved. And all of a sudden, the people are just so overtaken with how beautiful this sculpture is. Now, picture something interesting. He's now going to do the unveiling of a public, and people are starting to see it, but he's going to do this public unveiling. All of the townspeople are going to come. At the same time, Leonardo has finished his Mona Lisa. He's given the Mona Lisa to the husband of Lisa. The husband has hung it in his office study, and that's really churning and bothering Leonardo that his painting is hidden. Now, all of a sudden, it's the same time that Leonardo is going to be showing his sculpture. What's really interesting about this rivalry between the two of them is that the night before Mona Lisa was given to the husband to put into his study, he did a private showing. Leonardo did a private showing, and people came to see the Mona Lisa. And Michelangelo had heard that there was this private showing, but he doesn't want to go when everybody else goes. He doesn't want to give Leonardo the pleasure of seeing him look at this Mona Lisa. And so what does he do, Leonardo? Do you remember? I know many of you didn't get to read the book, so I'm just going to try to summarize for you. But what he ends up doing is that night, by candlelight, he sneaks into this room where there's a private showing, and he looks at the Mona Lisa. And Michelangelo is absolutely devastated because he realizes Leonardo had not just captured the likeness of the Mona Lisa, but he had captured the woman herself. And he realizes, oh my God, I can never outdo the master. I can never. And here I'm going to be showing David. He's mortified. He actually runs away. He doesn't even want to go to his own public unveiling of David, because he realizes he can never compete with Leonardo. What's so fascinating about this? Picture now, it's the day of the unveiling of David, and it ends up that his friend, Michelangelo's friend, finds where he's hiding and says, Michelangelo, you've got to come back. It's your gorgeous sculpture. You've got to come back. You've got to be there. So sure enough, he goes back and he's there. And of course, he sees this wild acceptance, and everyone is just thinking it's so amazing, the sculpture. At the same time, Leonardo sees all these people rushing over to see David. So of course he wants to see David also, but he can't give him the pleasure of seeing it with everybody else. So what does he do? He's trying to secretly see it, but he sees he's overtaken by all these throngs of people. And so what he does, instead of going at that point to see David, he goes back to the house of Lisa. And at that point, he says to her husband, I'm going to buy this painting back from you. Because his rivalry is such that he realizes, wait a second, David is getting such public acclaim for his masterpiece. I cannot let my masterpiece hang in this guy's dingy office. And so he runs off, and he, in fact, makes the deal, gets the Mona Lisa, and of course now he keeps it with him, and of course it becomes a public display. At the same time, all these people go to see David. It's this public unveiling, unbelievable. Everybody is just thinking it's incredibly beautiful. That night, when the throngs have left, that's when Leonardo goes secretly, and you see him, he goes and he sees David. And he's got a young student with him. And what's really beautiful at the end of the story is the young student walks up and does not know he's walking with Leonardo da Vinci, but he's an art student. And he goes, oh my God, I've heard about this David. I've heard how amazing it is. And Leonardo says to him, they look at David together. And of course, Leonardo is beyond impressed. And he says, you know something? Let's both sketch this, because you're never too old or too young to be learning from a master. So at the very end, you realize that Leonardo does realize how gifted Michelangelo is. And of course, Michelangelo realizes how gifted Leonardo is. So that's how the author weaves together the two stories of their rivalry.
Right.
What is really beautiful in both of these books, I think, is the way the author brings her art knowledge in describing David, the way David is sculpted, how he uses his hammer and his chisel. And everyone says to him towards the end, they say to him, oh, it's gorgeous. The people, that he allows to see it, his fellow artists or whoever else, they say, no, don't do anything more to it. Just use a file. You could ruin it. But he realizes when he did the Pietà, he used his hammer and his chisel, and he did the undulating waves of her gown. And he gets light and motion in it in the marble. And so with David, he does the same thing, but it's the muscles. He uses that same thing. So what the beauty of the book is that what she brings to it in terms of her art background in as well. Yeah. And then I want to show you the video.
I just wanted to say that the way it made up that the stone spoke to him, which we don't know. It didn't never happen, but it is beautiful that he waited and waited until finally the stone spoke to him. Right. I thought that was a very good idea from the author.
The idea being that instead of saying, you know what, like the idea is we always think of, the stone, that we think of the sculpture. He's saying the sculpture was always inside the stone. All he had to do was free the sculpture. He had to cut away. Okay, that's it. We think of it the opposite, but he's saying that the stone tells him what is inside of that sculpture. Yeah, Kathy, did you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to ask one question. If they spoke, I'm looking at a photograph of David now, and I've seen it in Florence.
Yeah. And
the right hand is much larger.
Right.
Did he talk about that?
Yes. So in other words, what he did was, and you'll see, I've got a video now, Kathy. What I'm going to show you guys is, oh, I'm sorry. This is, I just lost you. I don't know if you lost me. Let me just see if this is going to, 1 second, guys. Am I on the screen with you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see me? I'm trying to get rid of a phone call right now because, okay, I lost you on my screen. Okay, great. Okay. So what he talks about how everything he did was proportional for the way you're viewing it. It is so tremendous that when you're looking up at it, he did it so that it would be proportional for the viewer. But it's so big that he talks about when he's sculpting it, when he's sculpting the nose, he's like almost inside the nose. That's how, he almost, when he's sculpting, he disappears inside the stone. That's how deep the stone was and how large the sculpture is. So yeah, he talks about that.
Okay.
So I want you to see this. Okay. Any other comments about the book? Okay. So I'm going to now go ahead and turn this over to Leah, and I want you guys to watch this. It's the CBS segment Sunday morning on Leo da Vinci. And then following that, I'll talk to you in between. There's a Michelangelo little segment that I want you to see, and the shots of David. Kathy, you'll really enjoy that. Okay, so let's, Leah, take a thing, guys. Listen, if we don't get to speak at the end, lovely to see you all, and we'll see you then in September.